So the other week,
Yeah.
I dove into the difference between huge and
Huge.
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 Huge. And this falls under the category of huge. Huge. We talked about this the other week. We've partnered with Vivo Barefoot. So excited. The feedback we've gotten from those of you who've already copped your pair from vivobarefoot.com/RX'D. Amazing. I think it is one of these. I have two pairs now. I have like my day-to-day sort of shit kicker pairs that I just wear going to the grocery store or whatever. And then I actually have the Primus 3s, which I wear to train. And the thing with barefoot training and barefoot exposure, and I think this is a worthwhile, and they actually go into this when you register. When you register, you get a 100-day free trial on their footwear. So just like I'm telling you, just fucking try it. Just go on, use the 20% that you get at vivobarefoot.com/RX. But you also get access to the Vivo Health Barefoot Fundamentals online course. Graded exposure, right, is something that I think is big. Understand like how force absorption and force production, like the magnitude. So I think some people who may have tried this in the past with like, I don't want to say lesser, but let's, have gone down the barefoot route, let's just say that, have just jumped a little bit too head first. Get a pair to train in, right? Because you'll notice, and I was telling this on the last time we talked about it, my feet were like cramping just for my 2 hours a day that I was training, having them on. Once that cramping cessation stopped and the adaptation started being made, then it was like, well, we want to keep adapting, right? So we want to keep stimulating. So then I got myself another pair and I would start wearing them periodically throughout the day, right? If I'm just going out at night and I had to wear dress shoes or my fancy J's or whatever, slip on the fancy J's. But if I just, go into the grocery, then I would start to and guess what happened? My feet started feeling like they were going to cramp up again.
Right.
And it's like, oh, more stimulus, more adaptation. But knee pain, hip pain, all started to dissipate. And I have a pretty nasty history of structural damage.
Yeah, I'd say.
Right? Yo, Jay did, and maybe we'll do this on a pod, like do a drawer test to show you how little or not of an ACL I have in my left knee. It's quite frightening. But we talk about this in Prescript Level 1, the premise of out-functioning bad structure.
Absolutely.
Right? Foot function is something that's, drastically diminished with, wearing kicks like this, wearing shoes in general. So, so many features about these shoes just, get you what you need, right? And there's such a forward-thinking company. They're great people. Couldn't be prouder to be associated with and having them support the podcast has been so cool. So guys, support them, show love for the podcast, show them what we're all about. So even just go check out the website, vivobarefoot.com/RXD. So that's VIVOBARE foot, FOOT.com/RXD. If you go through that link, you get 20% off your shoes. You get 100 free day trial. Trust me, after day 2, day 1, you're going to keep them. You're going to buy more. So huge fan of these guys. Huge thanks for the support. And guys, go show us some love. Now, today's episode.
Yeah, this is great.
You know what, man? This is how I gauge success. Is that someone like Eugene? So I first met Eugene when I was flying to Melbourne in March of 2020, world lockdown, while I was in the air. And I swear to God, before I landed, I had a message in my DM from him, and I only met him in passing once or twice before. Like, hey, man, I know you're probably not going to have any place to train. Mi casa, su casa. I think, did I get that right?
I think so, yeah.
My house is your house?
Yeah,
Did I do that? Is that Spanish?
Yeah, Spanish, Italian, one of those.
Spanish, Italian? James Marshall? Spanish, Italian? Any ideas?
Yes, Spanish, Italian.
It's Spanish, Italian, yes. Okay, all right.
Okay.
He's fluent in the language of Spanish, Italian. And I was like, dude, man, what a fucking guy. Like, obviously a huge name in our industry, and rightfully so. His humility, his honesty, second to none. Yeah, he makes it cool to be honest. Like, and the conversation we had today, similar to our previous podcast where he had me out in we made a makeshift studio just for RX. Like, he put a studio together for us to record our podcast with him on it. Yeah, and so it was cool. Dude. Yeah, it was cool to be able to return the favor. You know, like
absolutely.
we put a lot of hard work into the studio, and to be able to share it with someone who understands it. Just such a special dude across the board.
Yeah.
Very
Just
happy to have him out.
really thoughtful, really insightful. The way he answered questions, you could tell that he cares a lot and he puts a lot of thought into the things that he does and the content he creates. So it's really interesting to get that perspective from him.
And mind you, like, he just came off a whirlwind flight,
Yeah.
right? He flew from would have been Melbourne through Auckland to New York, to San Francisco to New York to Toronto. And like, look, I've done podcasts after just getting off the plane, and I'm not a quarter, an eighth, a 16th of as present as he was.
So true.
And he was in the room, man. And I think that's something that a lot of people fuck with. He's someone that when you meet him in person, he's exactly who he is, and that's where the honesty comes in, the transparency. Like when you watch one of his videos, he is that guy on the internet. He's that guy when we sit down and have a podcast. He's the same guy when we go out to dinner.
Right.
Shout out Soto for hooking it up. Just an all around, like, an admirable person who just happens to be one of the foremost thought leaders in our industry. Humble. He takes everything with a grain of salt. He's self-deprecating almost to a fault, but very, very happy to be able to call Eugene a friend, and very happy to be able to share this conversation with you guys. I know the last episode, you guys wanted more, and rightfully so. So, real quick recap, Vivo, vivobarefoot.com. Huge thanks for making this podcast possible. So vivobarefoot.com/RX'D, 20% off, 100-day free trial. Check it out, cop a pair. You don't like them, send them back. You're not going to send them back because you're not going to not like them. Eugene, and also nutrition.
It's live.
It's live. Phil Smith, you guys listen to the episode. If you haven't, go back and listen to it. Phil Smith is going to be teaching a course for a prescript nutrition branch, and that's going to be sports performance.
Yeah.
Nutrition for sports performance. Guys, the level of, or the amount of actionable takeaways from this course will change the way that you write nutrition programming. It'll change the way you address assessments and interventions. It'll change your own programming. I've hired Phil to do my nutrition for my training, and the difference it's made is immediate. So if you're interested at all, price point's very accessible. We break it down into monthly installments. If you can't attend the live lectures, everything goes up in the portal for you. So no reason to not. Without further ado, Eugene Teo.
Enjoy.
Lundy, hit it.
You're tuned in to RX Radio.
Yeah, welcome, man.
Thank you.
This is my little token of gratitude for you having me out and building a studio in the middle of your gym.
Yeah, why not? It's the things you do.
No, it was so unnecessary for what it was.
Yeah, but you had to level up and make an actual studio.
And literally, it was
in
merely
someone else's gym. You're like,
it was
I've gotta do
merely
this.
as a token, as a token of my appreciation. I had this whole thing built.
Yeah,
man. How you doing?
doing good.
Welcome.
Good. A little bit jet lagged, but
Dude.
it's good to be here.
Yeah.
Now, you were like the OG, like travel around the world, talk about lifting weights guy, and then I was like, hey, that looks like fun. I'm going to do that. Has it been difficult to reacclimate to the traveling lifestyle? Did you get jet lagged when you were traveling around before?
Yeah, I'm so fragile now. I'm so fucked. It's crazy. Like in the past, I'd be fine. Like I'd maybe have a couple of days, maybe half a day where I'd be a bit messed around, but I was doing a lot of preparations. Like I can't even remember what I was doing, but I was taking a lot of different supplements, changing my food times, changing my training times. I'd even do things with like not just like the blue light blockers or whatever, the crazy glasses, but I'd be doing things like temperature changes. Like I'd be trying to make sure that my body was hot at certain parts of the day, or the extremely cold certain parts of the day, to try to get my body into the right circadian pattern. It's a whole nother level of just like fucked upness. This is the whole biohacking days. Now, how much of it actually worked versus how much of it was actually just placebo and, hey, Eugene, you're 25 years old, anything's going to work fine for you, you're not going to be having an issue anyway, who knows? But for whatever reason this time around, I'm just messed up.
Australia is the most inconveniently located place in the
big
entire
time.
planet.
Big time.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Do you think like over time the jet lag was just graded exposure? Like you just got so used to, because when you went on the road, you were gone for like 6 months at a time.
Yeah. I mean, I was strategic about it. The first time I went on a big world tour, which is like 9 months, I flew east. Which is what you don't want to do, because it makes it much harder because you got to technically go to bed earlier. Like I would wake up,
I got to write all this because I've been doing this for 3.5 years with no forethought whatsoever.
I learned this after because I remember I left Melbourne Wednesday 8 a.m. and I arrived San Diego Wednesday 8 a.m. I was like, this is weird. This is foreign to me. And apparently when it comes to traveling, I feel like when you do like these 24, 30-hour stints, you're going to be fucked regardless. But apparently when you travel, when you fly westward, it's easier because you end up getting tired and you've got to go to bed earlier, which is easy. Whereas when, I think that's it. Yeah, because your body clock's in a later time zone when it's still light out, so easy for you to just fall asleep. Whereas when you fly eastward, it's the opposite, where you're awake when you should be asleep. Your body's all wired because you're still in 6 p.m. time zone when it should be like 11 p.m. and you should be falling asleep. So it's hard to do that.
You know what gets me is like because when we think of the world, we think of it like a flat map that we've all seen.
Sure.
But then when you're on a plane and you're going like, I need to go from Australia to, I don't know, to San Diego. And like, we're now flying over the South Pole. I'm like looking at the flat map in my brain going, but I just need to go here.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, we're going to go this way or that's like,
Yeah.
the flight map thing, sometimes depending on the airline you fly, it's the default screen. And I'm just like, that's like when people do cardio and they don't want to see the time. If I see us doing some weird circuitous route, that makes a lot of sense because the earth is round.
Yeah.
That's when I freak out. I was like, oh my God. Because you're like, I don't know, when I was flying over here, you get like dead zones of Wi-Fi. It's like, I enjoy working on planes. It's probably one of my favorite things to do. It's probably one of my favorite feelings in the world. It's like, I'm in a tin can 41,000 feet above the ground. I'm going 600 kilometers an hour and I can just type about the bench press or the lat pull down or something. And when you look out and you've just left the desert 4 hours ago and you're just looking at it's complete snow. Like, how in the fuck, where am I right now? I can't do that. That mental piece messes me up.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've definitely noticed the climate changes.
Yeah.
Even going from, one thing, Melbourne, Australia is very similar to how it is here in Toronto, but then New York was very humid. My sinuses are messed up, my allergies playing up. I'm just not acclimated.
Is it a net positive though? Like I've gotten so much out of traveling.
Oh, for sure, absolutely. Like it's worth it.
Yeah,
it's worth like being able to just be somewhere different, like show Katrina around, like through New York and just be a tourist again. It's been so rewarding being able to do that, and it's exciting.
But you've done I remember following you back when you would do you're traveling on the road 6-9 months. You do fitness locations that I didn't even know had fitness. Like I've done some obscure stuff, but like when it comes to like, I didn't know this country had walls. And Eugene's like just hosting us. I'm like, they speak English?
Where did you just come back from? Didn't you come back from somewhere weird? Not Dubai.
Serbia.
Serbia, there you go. Was it Serbia?
Yeah.
That's I wouldn't think of going to Serbia.
I wouldn't think about going to Serbia either. If I'm being honest. Serbia was the best because you arrive there, and I was, it's COVID times where everyone's like a little bit concerned with the travel. And I get there, and this guy Milos picks me up from the airport, and I was like, right, what's the go with masks? And he goes, well, it's hard to smoke inside when you have a mask on. And I was like, oh, brilliant. This is what I travel for. But that's kind of to my point. Like Serbia's a bit off the beaten path for most people, but those are my favorite trips.
Yeah,
like those are like, because there's a building in Serbia in downtown Old Belgrade that has a giant hole in it where a bomb blew up when NATO bombed Serbia in the mid 1990s.
Right.
And it's like, I just use fitness as to fuel my travel addiction. Because yes, tell me more about this.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's like, what are the places you've been where you're like, okay, I can't believe fitness got me here?
Yeah. For me, there was, I think the biggest one was Italy.
Really?
Like, it was in Rome, which is weird.
Like Franco Colombo?
Yeah, I knew, like, obviously fitness is a thing there, and they're very, I wouldn't put them in the same category, per se, as Serbia. And this is me knowing nothing about Serbia.
No, you know everything. They started 2 world wars, and they're proud of it.
Right. But yeah, I was over in Italy thinking to myself, how the hell did I get here? How did I get here from doing fitness or whatever? And out of all the different places through Europe, there was Italy, so Rome, there was Portugal. I was over there. I actually planned my whole last tour all around being in Portugal because I wanted to go see Tool, the band.
Oh wow!
I was like, I want to go see them. I don't know why I wanted to go see them in Portugal of all places. But I was like, I want to do that, so I'm going to book that, and then I'm going to find a way to methodically make my way over there, and make it a business thing, make it a work thing, make it worthwhile. Just like you saying, you use fitness to sort of fund your traveling is exact same thing.
Has it been like, where have you been from like a resource perspective? Because Italy, you could find a big box gym in Italy. I would imagine or what are the gyms you go to and you're like, oh, Okay, like
This is all we have.
look out, Toto. We're not in Kansas anymore.
Yeah.
Like, especially coming from your gym. Like, your gym is so
Yeah,
well
for
kitted
sure.
out.
Oh, that's a really good question. So, like, what sort of like, I guess, had me a little bit shocked or like a little bit scrambling.
Yeah.
And this is a weird one, but Birmingham in the UK.
Okay.
Now, great bodybuilding meccas there.
Yeah.
I was in like the bodybuilding mecca. What was it called? I can't remember. It's gonna look bad. But I was in like their Doherty's gym kind of
Right.
thing over there, and I ended up being stuck up in this little yoga-ish stretching area for the whole 2 days. They didn't force me in there,
Yeah.
but just with the way that music was blaring in all the different rooms,
yeah.
or so packed with members, it was just not going to work to do it anywhere else apart from
Yeah.
this one little yoga studio, stretch zone essentially. And I was like, okay, this is panic mode now. I've got to think on my feet. How do you teach a training-based seminar
Yeah.
with nothing but a few straps and body weight and maybe an adjustable bench and plenty of bodies
Yeah.
and keep it interesting? But I've actually been very fortunate because after that was actually very early on in one of my first tours. I then made the big effort to make sure before I go anywhere, I'm going to make sure I really closely vet the gyms I'm going to be at.
Yeah.
And that was a huge thing to make sure that I was able to not be left scrambling. So I think because of that, I'm trying to think if there was anything. Nothing stands out to my mind where I've been like, oh my God, I'm strapped. Or I'm like,
What
this
about
is-
for your own training? Like outside of seminars, like
Yeah, yeah.
I oftentimes find like we find ourselves training in gyms that aren't where we host for a myriad of reasons, geographical location, proximity to an airport, whatever. Like if you've ever been in a gym that's just like bare bones, like it's just dumbbells or just barbells or like it's just the combo home gym, it's a lat
press,
pull down,
row.
chest
Bow
press,
flex.
leg exercise.
I had that in both the Philippines and in Portugal.
Now, here we go.
I remember, the
Okay.
Philippines. I was like,
Yeah.
I've got to find somewhere to train, and Googling, and they don't have great photos of the gyms. And
Right.
okay, so they'll do. And it was literally about the size of this podcast
Yeah.
studio here, so it was ridiculously humongous.
Huge,
It was
yeah.
huge.
It goes
was
for
huge.
miles
Like,
in every
you get
direction.
lost in there. You get lost in there. But I had one of those. Is that called a Bowflex? I don't know. Where he's got like 10 pieces in one.
Yeah,
I'm
the old
thinking,
weed, like it was like a weeder
Yeah,
special.
yeah.
Some
And
I'm
mom
like,
sold
how am
it
I
at
gonna
a
do
garage
this?
sale or something.
And like you put the whole stack on for the chest press and you do it with one arm.
Yeah.
Not because you're so strong, but because it's just not made to
Yeah.
actually challenge you if you're above or if you're, been training for more than a week,
Yeah.
maybe. So that was interesting, trying to just get around that and make it workable.
The contrast here is like, from the hot yoga studio in Birmingham to the home gym garage setup in a commercial or in a gym in the Philippines. Like, you are one of the first who I've seen kind of come full circle on like the training education. We talked about this over the last week because we've had coaches come in and we feel like they, obviously no one knows everything, but there's a window of stuff that matters. Right. So from like an education perspective and from your own training perspective, you got to realize where those boundaries are. And I feel like you've been really good at finding those boundaries of like, yes, the ethereal stuff is interesting. The theory is interesting. But like when it comes to the applied stuff, like that's really where the magic happens. And you were one of the first to like, be like, yeah, I recognize like the theoretical nuances in the, whether it's like digital arguments over Instagram or whatever. But like, you really were able to like be centered enough in like your own application to be like, from a teaching perspective, look, I've done this in a yoga studio in Birmingham. I've trained in a chest pressy home gym thing in the Philippines. Like that level of perspective is hard to arrive at, and I feel like a lot of the industry misses it and is just playing around these ethereal outer borders.
Oh, for sure.
Without this like contained
For sure.
application.
Like I feel like the big thing at the moment is this whole optimal, like making it a perfect biomechanics thing to make it as optimal as possible. And I mean, TikTok has not helped that at all. Are you on TikTok at all?
Our marketer just opened. I don't know how to use it. My wife's on there. Like she does well.
Right.
Like has the hundreds of thousands of things. The TikTokies.
It's a whole different. I don't even know how to describe it in terms of the way that the population is there. I mean, for one thing, you're going to have a much younger audience in general, but just the mindset, the mentality they have.
Is it short attention span?
Short attention span, but not
Yeah.
even, it's just the way that they'll. Okay, let's say that I do a post on Instagram saying, "Hey, do this exercise because it's going to give you jacked biceps." People will either be like, "Great, I'm going to do it," tell their friends about it, or they're going to be like, "I don't agree with it, and here's why." On TikTok, you won't get that. On TikTok, you have people saying, "I'm going to tag 10 different accounts. Hey, can you verify this?" Can you tell me what you think of it? And they don't know how to think for themselves. Like, I don't mind being disagreed with. I don't mind being wrong. I'm going to be wrong 90% of the time.
Right.
But go ahead and tell me why I'm wrong. Don't question and pull some other authority in to tell me that I'm wrong or to argue it or to verify it. Why can't you think for yourself? This TikTok mindset with a lot of the audience is they don't know how to think for themselves. They've got to go to their false gods of whoever these bigger influencers are to say, hey, can you verify this is correct? Like, how often do you see on Instagram someone saying, hey, I've got to verify your account. I've got to make sure that what you're saying is legit. No one does that. They just say, I agree or I disagree, and here's why. End of story.
I didn't realize that's where, because we're not on TikTok. I didn't realize that was coming.
bad.
I've had a few people like tag Squat University and whatever,
Right.
and like,
Yeah.
and the nice thing is, he doesn't respond.
Yeah.
Because like, and that's honestly, I think one of like the hallmarks of someone who is worth verifying something is that they are at a level of professionalism where they're not engaging in like, you know, anonymous 781, which is like some cat anime photo with like 3 followers and no post.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, I'm not committed. You're not committed to this. I'm not committed to this. And that's like a hallmark. Like Joe Bennett is one that comes to mind. Joe gets tagged in my stuff all the time, mostly because people think I'm him. Because I'm just a white guy with a beard.
Absolutely.
Hand to God, I landed in Toronto after COVID, flying from Sydney to Hong Kong, peak lockdown. And I was like, I'm not locking down. This is ridiculous. I'm going to come train. So I came here and I was walking back and I was like, okay, this is fine. We're all good. And I get stopped on the street. Like, hey, oh my God, like you're there. And this guy runs up to me. And I was like, oh no, like if this guy posts me and like, you know, I was posting my traveling and like I was locking down, it's not a good look. And sorry, not sorry. And I'm like waiting. I'm like not going to say no. I'm not going to, you know, it's always cool when people recognize you.
Absolutely.
And he takes a photo, shakes my hand, and goes, "Thanks, Joe." And I'm like, "Oh, that was weird." Like maybe my mom calls me Joe because it's like short of Jordan. Anyways,
Kind of.
and then I get tagged in something later, and it's just that's not me. That's at the Muscle Talk. They tagged Joe Bennett. I was like, "Woo!"
That's
Woo!
funny.
Yeah, I got away with it. But I don't even know. But what the fuck were we talking about? I'm losing it.
TikTok.
Oh, the
And-
TikTok, yeah, the authority. But Joe is one. Sorry, Joe is one that you get, and like Joe doesn't engage.
No.
Because he's like, I
Yeah.
don't know, I'm a professional. He's a professional. I'm sure he has a reason. It's probably longer than what would fit in a caption. And yes, you're right. He is someone that would be an authority to speak on that. But the same thing that gives him the authority is the same reason he's not going to speak on it.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
I
didn't
think a
realize
lot of
was
that,
TikTok.
especially on TikTok, it sounds like this generation, it's a passive pursuit of knowledge, right?
yeah.
Like you put out content, you put out things that are going to challenge people to think for themselves, but they just expect to be spoon-fed this stuff, and they're looking for someone that they've deemed as trustworthy
For sure.
to verify that for,
For
them,
sure.
as opposed to someone like you who's actively pursuing knowledge.
Yeah.
Right. The creator's actively pursuing content, stuff to put together, new ideas, and maybe testing that out. You're right. It may not be right all the time, but at least you're putting thought into it and you're pursuing something that's different, as opposed to someone that's just sitting back and just being fed whatever is on their feed and then just saying, I like this, verify my bias, or I don't like
That's
this.
what it
you're
is. And it's so
wrong.
obscure. Like,
Yeah.
I never thought we'd get to that point as a population where we need, like, spoon feeding has always been a thing. Everyone always
Yeah.
wants to be spoon fed. But to this level of, like, wow, you're actually actively choosing to be lazier in your development. And, like, this is the first point I'll say we're actually going to start going backwards.
I remember my niece and nephew were watching YouTube. Oh, this was years ago, so 8 years ago. And they were watching YouTube of someone else playing a video game.
Yeah.
And I was like,
They're the biggest YouTube accounts still. They make millions.
and this is like that was my canary down the coal mine. Like it was like, oh, there's something coming and this is bad.
Yeah.
It's like I remember getting reprimanded as a child for playing video games.
Right.
And it's like we've stepped back into the sidelines of something as remedial as video games. It's like this can't be good. And then 8 years later, at Squat University, is this how I should breathe during a squat? I don't know. At the Muscle Dog seems wrong, and it's just like, oh no. It's such a sense of, to me, it comes off as such a sense of entitlement.
Right.
Like you're entitled to this knowledge. Is that who? I forget who it is. It's some philosopher. You probably know this. Beware of unearned wisdom, and I feel like that's what everyone's out collecting. It's
true.
They're just trying to, because you know what they're trying to do is like they're just trying to sound smart on their own Instagram account,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, man, like why are we trading in this social currency?
For sure.
like accruing this social capital. It's almost like we have this little social like stock market.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, what's Eugene trading at? I don't know, the bajillion followers. Oh, what's so and so trading at? Oh, this. Oh, okay. Because it like validity is really has ascended to like who has more, like a truth is in the masses type of thing.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's more people who are Catholic than practice Jainism. So it's I don't know,
I knew what Jainism is.
like they don't step on grass. Like they're just the most passive people in the world. But it's like, okay, yeah, we'll believe this because everyone believes it. Yeah, it's an odd. I hope it's just a phenomenon. It's certain there, like everything has to have a correction, right?
It goes too far, and then people start to push back. But the
You get these
trend
violent swings.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There's just like 5-year-old fight clubs
Yeah.
popping up. They're just handling business in the streets. That's a world I want to live in.
That'll be the new apocalypse.
I think
the
so.
second coming. That'll be cool.
Yeah,
That'll
I
be cool.
think we're
Yeah.
due for an overcorrection.
Yeah. But I mean, what do you notice with this whole optimal thing? Yeah, you guys had a very particular response there when I said optimal.
Oh, it's
I've got to dig into it.
It's a topic of discussion for sure.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
you know, optimal doesn't exist in my life, right? Like, I had similar plight to you, a 14-hour flight with an 8-hour time zone swing. So I'd leave the desert at 3:30 a.m. and I arrive here at 9:30 a.m. And then it's North Africa, Tampa Bay, LA, Brisbane. And it's like there's no such thing as, but that's not unique to me. Like everyone has their own version of that.
For sure.
So it's just, to me, it's like I've more or less come full circle, and it's just don't tell me, show me, right? Like I literally start to make decisions about training optimality in the same way I did when I was 16. Are you in better shape? Are you like that's, I don't care about followers. I don't care about green X's and red checks. Like I have a fundamental understanding of applied biomechanics that's really brought me back to like, hey, you know, if I'm tight on time, you better believe I'm doing a straight bar lat pull down. You better believe I'm doing pull-ups. You better believe I'm doing a single arm dumbbell row. Like the nice thing that's kept me grounded, training is obviously like the proving ground, but the nice thing that's kept me grounded is like, you know, being friends and getting to train with like I trained with Antoine yesterday. Right. You've trained with Antoine.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite shit on YouTube. If you haven't seen Eugene and Antoine, like when it comes to characters training, that's it. And every single bodybuilder will say the same thing. I'd like to do it this way because it makes it harder.
Yeah.
Literally, I did the adductor machine yesterday, which let me tell you, not high up on my priority list when I'm training. But it's Antoine Vaillant. Like, he has the biggest legs in the world.
You're not going to say no.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right. So we did adductor and the panada hinge V squat, but we did it as a good morning.
Nice.
Right. Which is fun.
Optimal.
You get to do that with Antoine Vaillant. Like, if anything's going to get me to turn up to 10, it's that, right? Like,
Sure.
we have a coach, Eric Beguer, and he's like, intensity is the great unifier, right? So it's like, if you just try hard, it's all going to come out in the wash, right?
Absolutely.
So like this idea of reps in reserve or RPE, like I'm just too old.
Yeah.
I feel like in Lethal Weapon, where the guy's about to retire in 7 days. I'm too old for this shit. That's me, man. I like to post pictures of my cat and the wife, and you know.
Never thought I would hear that.
Yeah, I just put a little
The cat
like
part.
I don't know. I can't, man. It's too negative. Optimal has just led to too much of a negative culture in fitness that we don't need, and it's already something that, you know, the service that's provided, the information that's provided, when provided through like a useful medium, a welcoming medium, is needed. Like, you know, COVID was, you know, rattled a lot of people's cages when it came to like health and fitness, and that was obviously like an undertone discussion throughout the entirety of the 2.5 years, and hopefully it continues on after. And then people are like, okay, health and fitness. I'm gonna go look into health and fitness, and they just look at this like ridiculous incestuous knife fight arguing about nonsense. It's like, you know what? I don't run into these things when I follow Nutella accounts or wine accounts. I'm gonna not get it. Getting in shape seems really dangerous. So I mean, that's my take on it, man. It's like, I think the healthiest thing in the world, the most optimal thing in the world, is being happy. Like my parents are not in great shape. Their parents were not in great shape. Their parents' were not in great shape. My great grandma lived to 106. She was the last 6 years of her life, she's like, fuck it. Mountain Dew, Jack Daniels, plain Lay's potato chips. 6 years. But it's like, all right, what am I going to tell her? So it's just like, that's whatever, honestly, whatever makes you happy. Like we can look at like, hey, you know, this exercise before this exercise, or
120 degrees shoulder flexion for the lats only. Otherwise you're fucked.
Well, that's
So,
the thing, is it
no
exists in
lats.
theory, not application.
Yeah.
Right? People are just making this barrier of entry to this is the perfect exercise, as opposed to just going in and doing a exercise.
Yeah. I mean, I actually, you know, I never really considered the whole barrier to exercise for the longest time. Like maybe 2-3 years ago, when I was really working on the nuances of this ideal position for lats or teres or for the pec major, clavicular, phalange. I was like, okay, this all makes a lot of sense. Let's do this. And I talk about it and say it's so interesting because you put up a post saying, hey, this is not glutes, or this is not your pec, this is your anterior delt, this is not your lats, this is teres, this is upper back. That's clickbaity. That's going to build you a big following and give you all the TikTok notoriety. But then I realized, hang on, is this actually really helping? And that's why I've turned away from it in the past few years, because I've realized, hang on, that's creating a barrier to movement. And like, you know, a lot of what the evidence-based world with physios, chiropractors, their big goal is to try to get people to remove barriers to exercise, where like we have a very different viewpoint on how we treat lower back pain or how we talk about injuries, saying like these things, they're not a life sentence, pain's not necessarily a bad thing. There's a lot of the perceptual things as well, and how can we remove barriers to movement. And then I realized, fuck, a lot of these people, unintentionally, but by creating all this super sciencey optimal biomechanics, it creates barriers. And then when you look at how many people are actually needing those applications, it's tiny, versus how many people need to actually just get off their ass and start moving a little bit. Go into the gym and do a suboptimal lat pull down. I don't give a fuck. At least you're moving. At least you're doing something. But I think, again, we're seeing that big shift away from what is probably best for the population.
I just think it's people who get into fitness, they often get into it at such a young age that they can't be physically empathetic to people's abilities. Like, you can't imagine what it's like for us to get up off the chair. You can't imagine what that's like to be 100% effort, right? Because our 100% effort is hundreds of kilograms on a barbell to get up. So us against our own body weight is like, it's just getting up off a chair. Now, it might not be to that same severity of like a lack of overall strength, but a lot of people just struggle with fighting against gravity, right? A lot of people are actually weaker than gravity, if that makes sense,
sure,
right? So, like, there's I look at it like a chessboard. A chessboard and a checkers board is the same board, right? It's the same black and white thing with the different pieces. But like, a lot of people look at these, what's the book? I just read Josh Waitzkin's The Art of Learning. They look at these chess prodigy moves of like the pawn moves here, and then the iliac phalange does the horse thing does the L shape, and they're like, dude, you're just dealing with checkers pieces. Just make little jumps.
Yeah.
Just make little jumps. So you get to a point where it's like, oh, okay, really, when we start moving the what's the castle-y one? A rook?
Rook.
No okay. Yeah, Queen's game.
Yeah.
But really, those pieces are just load management tools at the end of the day, because you can pull the full stack. Hey, let's not pull the full stack with our rhomboids and our rear delts or our lats or whatever. Let's pull half the stack with one arm, and we'll set it up this way. And a lot of it is just kind of, the minutia just helps manage load. Because if you're deadlifting 300-400 kilos and you go do the full stack lat pull with a gym pin, 7 plates per side or whatever the British people are saying these days, it's like, okay, we just need to do less now, right? And less might be a little pawn moves here. And then because you have like this, it's the same board, but the pieces have different rules. So like, that's where I look at optimal. It's like, optimal likely is for those who are, and not exclusively, but a lot of times where I utilize like the optimal model of this is, are you getting paid? Are you getting paid to work out or use your body in some? Are you a bodybuilder? Are you a football player? Are you some sort of athlete? That's where it might be useful, and it's great to have that understanding, because without that understanding, like, you might not be able to break into those circles. But it's like knowing what your pieces are doing, knowing what game you're playing. Are you playing chess or are you playing checkers?
Yeah, true.
Yeah, so that's my thing, is because the underloading effect, and like, this is kind of a mantra that I have, is like, load management is a double-edged sword. It doesn't just mean doing less. Load management, in the case of 90% of people who are weaker than gravity, would be doing more. That's the
Right.
load management. It's the other side of
Yeah.
the coin. So if the bilateral pronated grip, throw in all the lat pull down, is heavier, then that's the side of the sword you need, right? That's the load management you need.
Yeah. It's a good way to put it, conceptualize it.
Yeah, but for me, like the broader issue is just the knife, like the knife fighting. Like, imagine not liking someone because of the way they work out. It's the silliest thing in the world. And like I've seen it in real life, and you obviously see it on the internet. And it's such an odd concept to me.
Yeah, well, it's an identity, isn't it? Like, I identify, I'm a bodybuilder who does it this way. But and you say you're a bodybuilder, hey, you're not on my level.
Yeah.
You know, how dare you come in with your shitty, suboptimal 130 degree shoulder flexion lat pull down. How dare you? You can't call yourself a bodybuilder because I'm a bodybuilder.
You strike me as someone who's never had difficulty processing the online stuff, because there are some people who legitimately and are the self-awareness to be able to step away from it and like, look, I'm just following memes and cat pages or whatever dessert pages. Sure, but it's like you always strike me as someone who's like centered enough to not either be bothered or at the very least, if you are, to not really engage in a negative fashion.
Yeah, I'll engage a lot. Not in a negative, not in what I believe to be a negative fashion. Like if somebody calls me out, or if somebody has a dig, and it could be like a very educated person, or it could just be an absolute troll. If I can be bothered, I'll give some kind of response where it is like, hey, this is why I say this, or this is why I believe this to be the case, and I'll gauge their follow-up. And if their follow-up is a troll, okay, I'm done. I can walk away and I won't get triggered by it. I used to in the past.
Oh, I want to know that
Where
one.
I
want to know that one. I want to know what gets said, because I used to do this thing where I would, if I got an email that like bothered me, I would write my anger response, and I would send it to my assistant. And
Right.
She's like, "Is you good? Is that out of your system?" And I was like, "Okay, now write the polite one." I was like, "Okay, thank you."
No, I would do very much the same. Like I'd have, I'd write notes. I haven't, like, even very recently in the last couple of months, I've written just long extended responses to what I would want to say. And it could even just be for my own thing. I say, am I actually in the right here? Have I missed something? Am I
Is
missing a
that
nuance?
new, or is that something you always had with you? 'Cause like old angry, I'm hoping he was angry. I really want him to be angry.
I was angry in the past, but you know, I think the anger was more because I didn't know how to articulate myself.
Right.
And you just sort of like that kid who's just trying to express themselves, doesn't know how to, they just lash and just punch someone in the face instead, you know, because they don't know how to use their words or whatever.
Kids.
So, yeah. But I would sit there now and I'd be like, okay, I'm going to write the response. I'd be quite heated in these responses to myself, like in the notes app. And I'd use that more so as a reflective tool. It's okay, now that you've said all that you wanted to say, put yourself in their perspective. Have you missed something? And unfortunately for me, 9 times out of 10, I'm like, fuck, you missed something. Don't send it. Don't send it. You're going to get fucked. And step away.
Yeah.
But, yeah, like, because there's many times where I've just tried to take it to the grave, say, no, I'm correct. I'm so right on this. I know how wrong you must be. And I'll post that. And then I realize, nah, you didn't consider this context, or you didn't consider this perspective they were talking about. It could just be like the optimal biomechanics thing, where I'll be like, yeah, this is the optimal way to do that pull down. And then I realize, but actually it does create a barrier to exercise, or it creates a barrier to, movement in general. Or maybe it's a theoretical concept, is it really an application that's feasible for 99% of people, even like pro bodybuilders, pro athletes who are getting paid for this kind of stuff? Is it really going to keep them free from injury? Is it going to give them that extra little bit of lat hang on the iliac lat? Is it really going to be a noticeable thing that's going to make a marginal difference for those people? Honestly, probably not. Like when you look at how many people who are probably training optimally, how many of them get injured? Right. Quite a few of them, you know. I tore my pec the other day. I'm like, I'm training optimally. Yeah. So I thought. It's not going to save you from anything.
Do you have the same frequency of these interactions? I feel like you've carved out a niche of, I don't know, like unimpeachable in the sense that if he says it, it's definitely thought out at the very least.
Yeah.
Right. So like, do you find yourself over time, either because you engage in a more, maybe a less angry way, or you don't have that initial like, oh, note tap. Do you find you get less of it now? For sure.
There is a lot less. I still get it. I mean, the other day, this is probably in the last few months, I posted a very triggering YouTube video.
Which is what?
It was titled, why I stopped doing barbell exercises and you should too. Like, how's that for clickbait? Come on,
Relax.
you're gonna click on
That's
that.
good.
You're gonna be like, I'm gonna watch
this
that.
guy.
I'm gonna.
The only thing
I'm
I'm
gonna
mad
burn
about
this
is
guy to the ground.
that I can no longer use that title. Damn it. There goes the whole premise. There goes all the views.
So I posted it, and it was like a nuanced thing about saying, look, this is why I've stopped doing barbell, especially for upper body stuff, because hey, the joint position you're gonna be forced into versus using maybe a dumbbell, and like, people got triggered. A lot of people actually agreed to it. A lot of people were like, hang on, you've used the clickbait title. Fair enough. We know how YouTube works. We know how the internet works. You've got to watch it. But the actual video you did was very nuanced, talking about the benefits of them and why you still do use them on certain movements. But you talk about the potential, theoretical, inherent risks of it. And that's part of why I've chosen for myself to not do them, and why this could be an argument as to why you might not want to do them as well, which kind of fulfills the whole clickbaity thing of why I stopped doing them and why you should probably stop doing them too. Triggers a lot of people, of course. Gets a very like, but I'm a barbell athlete, I'm hardcore, this is what Arnie did or whatever. And it had a lot of, not a lot, but it had a fair amount of negative feedback to it, which, you know, I'm always going to welcome that. And I would sit there thinking to myself, man, have I missed something? Have I done something different? Even now, like, you know, tore my pec the other day doing barbell bench press. I should be saying, hey, it's proof. Come on, guys. Yeah. I injured myself just to show you guys how right I was.
I'm sacrificing my pec for your sin. Yeah. I am barbell Jesus.
But the reality is I still won't do that. I'll still say, you know what, this is just, for me, was it really the barbell? Was it the load management? Was it the recovery? Was it the flying dehydration? Was there so many other factors? Was it because I overloaded it when I shouldn't have, because it's a new movement for me after 7 odd years? So many reasons why it could have happened, and it's not going to be something I want to fearmonger. But yeah, when people came back and were saying, hey, you shouldn't do this, I think, I wanted to fight back and say, no, I know for sure why this is a more dangerous movement, and it's backed by many other peers within the industry, anecdotally, and there is also some theoretical components where it may create more tissue strain over time. But I would still say, hey, it's maybe I did miss out on the nuance and saying, you know what, it's theoretical. Maybe I can just listen to those people and sort of take a more measured approach to it, and not just bark down there and say, no, I'm so right and you're so wrong. But it depends on the level of their interaction. If they come at me and they're just violently, aggressively trolling, I'm like, I'm not going to bother with you.
You must have an external calibration tool outside of fitness for like introspection.
I don't know. You know what? I'll tell you a big part of it is, because I've thought about this a little bit. I don't have a formal education in this stuff. You know, I'm not a chiro, I'm not a doctor, not exercise phys. I studied business. Now, a lot of people use that against me. They'll want to go on an ad hominem attack and say, hey, this guy's got a business degree. Why the fuck are you listening to him? He's got no idea what he's talking about with any of this stuff. I said, that's great. I've got no idea. I've got no bias. I'm happy to be wrong about all this stuff. I want to be wrong about every single thing I say, because then I'm going to become closer to being correct every single interaction I have. So when some troll comes to me and says, you're wrong about these barbells, or you're wrong about this optimal way to train, I'm like, tell me more. Assume that you're not a dick, I want to listen to you. I want to hear about that. Whereas if I had a PhD, if I had 10 years invested, skin in the game of studying this stuff, and had a master's, whatever, I'd be like, who the fuck are you? Instagram Hustler 69. I don't want to listen to you. But I think that's actually been a very big humbling tool for me to realize that, hang on, I don't have the answers. And I've always spent my entire life from when I was a kid doing this stuff, having to just ask for questions. Say, hey, tell me, like, what is it about this exercise that's so good or so bad, or why should I train like this and not like that? I respect everybody for that. I want to learn from any person. Whereas I think when you get institutionalized and you get taught a certain way, as you guys know, like what you learned in chiro school, was it all correct?
Absolutely. It was the craziest thing in the world. Hand to God, in 6th quarter, we had a class called GIGU, gastrointestinal genitourinary. And it was basically, it was a ruse, because the entire, 12 weeks? How long were our quarters?
12, 13.
That would make sense.
Around there, yeah.
Led up to, it was just a culminating crescendo to sticking your finger up a fake butthole.
Love it.
What am I, camera one? That's right, a fake butthole. I paid $250,000 to put a finger in a fake butt next to this guy. So it's like, what are we doing here? You know what I mean? And yeah, I have particular biases about that technique. He has his technique, I have mine. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. Like, the point for me, like, you're such an interesting person because of that level of introspection, and I can't imagine you get that from fitness. I cannot imagine, Because even when I said, do you have an external calibration tool for the like being introspective outside of fitness? You're like, I thought a lot about this. I'm like, so you're being introspective about introspection? This is like the meta of introspection. Like, why? Like, is it just innate? Like, you said you've thought about this since you were a kid.
Yeah.
But like, in the hours you're not posting or creating content or creating coursework or writing programs, what is it that you think allows you to see just the perspective, the forest for the trees of the industry and be like, okay, I don't have an emotional attachment to this? Because if you don't, most people have an emotional attachment to the way they do their single arm lat pull downs because there's not a whole lot going on other than that.
Yeah.
Right. So like, was it just you always had other hobbies? You still have other hobbies? Like, what is the practice where you're like, you know what? I'm done with the fitness thing for today. The phone goes away.
Yeah.
And then something else goes in your guitar or food or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big part of it is having like other external things from the fitness industry, like hobbies. Like I play guitar a lot. Haven't played that in a long time, but I've got other interests. So I don't see myself as a fitness guy, which is kind of heathen because like, hey, you're the fitness guy. You're the bodybuilding guy. You're the muscle guy. You're the guy who does all this shit. And I'm like, well, as much as I can be identified as that by other people, that's not how I see myself. Right. And that's why I can just walk away from it. Like if I had to stop doing all this training stuff tomorrow, like, cool. Like, some people, they get injured or whatever, like I am, they're like, oh, I can't train anymore. And it comes at a big spiral, a big unraveling for a lot of people, athletes or bodybuilders, it is when they get injured and they can't train for a while, they get all depressed. And it's like, for me, I don't care. Like if I don't train for the next 6 months, I'm like, cool. What else?
Were you always like that though? Because
No. Yeah, like back in the bodybuilding days.
Muscle Eugene.
This is very different.
Was Muscle Eugene also angry response and notes Eugene?
Absolutely. I was like, a lot angry about
so vascular, just typing this thing.
Just mashing. Yeah. No, back then I was very different. Back then emotionally I was very attached to bodybuilding. I was like, this is me. And if I can't train, if I can't eat my meals, I'm going to go fucking insane. And that's because of how it's where I place my value. So for me back then, I placed a lot of value in like being respected, being I guess as a kid, I wasn't very confident. I didn't fit in very well. So like, I wasn't very externally validated. It's like, how can I get that? What if I build something that looks so impressive? People are going to be like, wow, you look fucking legit. You look good. And as a small Asian man, I was like, what's the most opposite of that? A slightly bigger small Asian man. So that was like what put me into bodybuilding. So for the longest time, I was just pursuing that of like, I want to be bigger so I look better. People will be in awe of me. Then I'll get the girls. I'll have all the accolades. This will be amazing. And of course, as you know, it doesn't really pay off at all. And if you have those kinds of childhood wounds or whatever, you're not really dealing with that shit, it's just going to compound to a really just fucked up adult baby, which is where I was for the longest time when I was bodybuilding. But when I stopped bodybuilding, it was part of me realizing, I looked at my life thinking, hang on, am I really happy? Like I look the best I've ever looked, perform the best I am. I'm really unhappy still. What's going on? Why am I treating my partner the way that I was? Like I think at that point, when was it? I just cheated on her actually at that point. Like we had a big blowout, and I was like, how have I let this happen? I've been with this woman for a long time and we're in a really good space, and how have I gotten to this point where I can just be so careless and be so disrespectful and do that to somebody who I claim that I love or whatever? I'm like, what's going on here? And I was, well, maybe I'm actually not really happy doing what I'm doing. And I was starting to unpack all of that, saying, why am I doing bodybuilding? Why am I doing this training stuff? What am I really trying to get out of all of this? Why did I cheat? What was going on there? And I came to realize it was all of that external validation. It was just me trying to get that dopamine rush, that drug of validation from other people. And I was like, okay, that's problematic. So I had to start to just pull myself away from all of that to realize what I really was, who I really cared about, what were my real values. Because I was putting all of my eggs in the one basket of other people validating me, which, as you guys know, is not a really good, healthy way to live. So I had to say, okay, what do I really care about? Strip everything else away. What do I really want out of life? What really excites me? It's not other people. It's not, not that I hate people. It's not that. It's like not other people's respect or validation. It's like, no, I like things like I like the continual pursuit of improvement and growth. You know, we've spoken about that in the last podcast we did. It was all about, I just want to be able to get a little bit better, do a little bit better, learn a little bit more in whatever avenue it is. You know, like we're all problem solvers as humans. We're all students. We're all trying to get a little bit better and do a little bit better. So for me back then, I was like, hey, what does that actually look like? Does that look like bodybuilding? For sure it can, you know, trying to improve our bodies. But I asked myself, have I really gotten to that point where I feel like I could learn more about my body from bodybuilding? And I said, probably not. So I just stopped doing all the bodybuilding things. And it was easy to just not identify as the gym guy anymore and say, okay, what do I feel I can learn more about now? And it was, I can learn more about teaching. I can learn more about the nuances to training to teach other people. I can try to explain biochemically or biomechanically, physiologically why things work the way they do in the body or whatever it is with what we do with our training. I can learn about that and I can teach about that. And that, at the same point in time, I started to, who was it? Luke Lehman. Yeah, Luke Lehman. Yeah. So he and I crossed paths around that same kind of time, around 2016 or so. And I was like, damn, this guy knows some shit. Like he's talking about stuff on the physiological level that no one talks about. So I was starting to really dive headfirst into all of that kind of stuff around conditioning work, around the health side, which is something that's very neglected in bodybuilding, of course. And it was fascinating. And that was a whole new thing. So for me, it was like no longer identifying as this big muscular person. It was like, no, I'm someone who identifies someone wanting to learn and improve. So I just went headfirst into that, headfirst into teaching. I said, I love interacting with people. I love connecting with people. How can I do more of that? Let's get on the road. Like it wasn't I want to make a lot of money. I want to be famous. I want to have this big brand behind me. I was like, no, I want to connect with people. You know, somebody wants me in the UK. I want to go see you in the UK. That was it. That was literally all it was. And like I got asked a lot, like, hey, how did you build this business? Like, well, it's 'cause I do what I was interested in. It wasn't because of like wanting to say I want to make a lot of money, because I'm sure you've got no idea how much money you make from Prescript. You have no idea. You know that somehow
That's my job.
somehow the lights are still on. You know.
Yeah.
But it's not something you think about. It's like, yeah,
No.
as long as I can afford to eat, which I think I can today, maybe. I don't know. We'll see what happens. That's all that really matters, because you have this understanding of what you want to do and what makes you happy. So for me, that was what it was. And then I could now that I identify as that, as someone who wants to just get better, learn more, be a little bit better, who's still going to fuck up every single time, because part of being better is fucking up every single day. If you're not making a mistake, you're not going to learn from that. So when somebody comes at me, I'm like, cool, I'm probably wrong. Tell me why. And I'm not going to get triggered by it and want to beat down your thumb and say, no, I genuinely want to learn why I'm wrong, or how I could have misworded something, how I maybe misinterpreted it, how I could say it a little bit better, so I can make it a little bit better next time. And I don't have an attachment to being wrong. If anything, I want to be wrong more than anything else. Because you're not attacking me and my identity, you're attacking where I currently was at in terms of my understanding, which I know is going to be flawed, because no one's perfect. And that was a big pivot.
Do you struggle with the fact, like, because, you know, external validation and the adulation that came with being jacked Eugene probably pale, and correct me if I'm wrong, but probably pales in comparison to the adulation that you're currently getting and the external validation that you're currently getting, because you're following so nothing but grow
for sure
year over year. Like,
for
is
sure.
it hard to stay? I mean, obviously, I think the answer is no. Maybe is it hard to is the wrong question, but like, how do you stay grounded to that, or shield yourself from that adulation or that wantingness for that validation, that dopamine hit, where it's like you're probably exposed to way more of it? Like, I've been following your guys' travel, and my condolences, because I'm sure, like, you're probably one of the most recognizable people in fitness, right? No one's going, oh my God, Joe Bennett. Like, it's like, no, that's definitely Eugene. Like, because you get, and undoubtedly you get that more now than before. Is it like, what tools do you use to deflect that, or is it not even an issue? Like, how do you stop that from planting a seed in your head and identifying with that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it really just does come down to, is that true to yourself? So when somebody comes, like 5-6 years ago, somebody came to me and said, oh my God, I love your stuff. I think it's a humongous ego boost. Like, fuck yeah, this is me. I'm going to get my dick sucked tonight for that. Yeah. Whereas
that's a clip right there. Clip that. Yeah, that's a reel. Jesus. Okay.
So I'm done.
That's all the time we're like
Put
paying
that
our
on TikToks.
sponsors for
I know you're a busy man, and
the literal mic. So yeah, I mean,
well,
5
I mean
years
today,
ago.
yeah, that would be how my mentality was. Like, I'm the fucking king dick. Whereas now it happens, I'm like, I'm so grateful. Like, I've been able to positively affect this person's life, and I've been able to have such a big impact on them, and I want to learn about them as well. Like, I want to know, hey, what do you do? What are you doing in town? Like, the other day we saw some people that were from Scotland, and they were holidaying in New York, and we were holidaying in New York, and they just bumped into, oh my God, we tracked you down. I was like, oh my God, what are you guys doing here? Like, I want to know about them, their background. I just want to learn about them. Because I don't necessarily care about that ego stroke anymore, because it's not true to who I really am and my values. So I don't really have to keep that in check anymore, because it is me as a person. Whereas if it was a fake, if I was still that externally validated person from 7 years ago or so, I would have to fake it. I'd have to keep myself in check. I'd have to have different tools to deflect it and say, no, that's bad. Don't do that. Keep that repressed. And that's never going to work.
Do you ever feel guilty like you can't spend enough time? Like, because if you do the math, like how much content you have on YouTube, how many hours watch? Because this is something that plagues me all. Like when we do, seminars for the weekend, by the end of it, I'm lying on the floor. Because it's like we have maybe 16, 20 hours across 2 days if it's a 2-day, and then it's like, okay, these people they've worked to make the money to fly here to spend time with us to hear me talk about lifting weights.
Yeah.
And they've listened to however many hours of podcasts or read some just obscenely long Instagram posts where it's like you got to put it in the comment section because that's how long it is.
Yeah.
And they read all that shit, and then they like bought your book and they read that too, and like they know, and it's like, man, I have 20 hours to like try and I don't even know if even the score is the right word. I don't know how you would describe it, but it's like
Fulfill expectations.
yeah, but like there's expectations you've put on yourself, right? Like they're just there, and we know this because we've gotten to know people, as I'm sure you have with people who are like dedicated, subscribers or followers or listeners or members of your app. It's like you're trying to write a balance or fulfill a balance that's not there.
Yeah.
Like, do you struggle with like, you run into someone on the street and like, oh my God, Eugene, and you're like, oh my God, you, and then like you're headed somewhere and like, there's not enough time in the day in your mind. Like, do you struggle with that?
Absolutely. I mean, the perfect person to ask us to is actually Katrina, because she sees me before and after. Like before an event, she'll see me stressing, thinking, I hope they have a good time. She'll see me after me like, hey, did they enjoy that? Should I change this? Like I'll be up. Like I know tomorrow I start teaching again. I'll be up late tonight redoing the seminar again. Like making sure it's panned out the way I want it to. We'll go home tomorrow and I'll be thinking about it. I'll change everything again for next week or for the day after. We meet someone on the street. I'll be like, man, did I get his name right? Have I met him before? Have I done this? And I'll make sure I can repost it. Make sure I can message them again. Everything.
Oh my God, people! I get this. This is therapy for me now. The episode's over. But like, people are like, oh, like I messaged you on Instagram. The first thing I asked them was like, oh, did I message you back? Like, did I message you back? And like, oh, I'm down for the most part, 99. I think maybe 100% of the time up till now, it's been yes.
Yeah.
But it's like such a, I don't know. I don't know why I approach it with such a transactional mind.
Of like they've taken value from you, so you want to give them more.
Yeah. I don't know, like indebted. I think indebted is probably it. Like I feel like anyone who's listened or like downloaded or like bought a shirt or a course or showed up, it's like, oh my God, like I was living in my car 4 years ago. Like you're the reason that I don't currently get my mail sent to a Forerunner. Yeah. Like thank you. And then it's like, can I buy you lunch? And they're like, whoa, dude, like, I just follow you on Instagram. Like, I'm like, okay, like, do you want to be friends? Should we be friends? Like, I'll send you a Christmas card. And they're like, oh my God, unfollow, and like, it's gone. Like, it's such a weird, I don't think we're meant to interact this way. At least not my brain just goes,
Yeah, it's a strange one. And I think it's a big part of, like, you can respect the journey. You can respect the process of where you've come from. You know what you've done to have to put yourself in this position, and you have this personal relationship with people. Like a lot of people in our positions, they don't have the personal relationship because they have a lot of PAs doing their DMs for them. They have a lot of other people doing all the hard work. They're kind of like the mascot more than anything else. And they don't care about the people so much. They see the people as a means to them growing their brand. They see all the different customers, like, you're a means for me to be able to buy a new car, buy the Balenciaga shoes, buy whatever else it may be. Like, that's what they see it as. Like, I can make a lot of money off you. I can make 20K of you, so I'll be nice to you right now. Whereas you see it as, you're someone who's clearly devoted themselves to whatever I'm putting out there. You're someone that I know that I can jam with. I want to have a beer with you. I want to hang out with you. You see it as a connection thing. And the money, the payment, the whatever, the business, it's a side effect of it. But for you, it's like, no, actually, you connect with the person, which is very different. And it's very rare. Like, a lot of people don't do that, especially in this fitness space. So I think in any space, when you start to get like big names or whatever, or famous in this kind of sense, you got two types of people. Those who are in it for themselves, and those who are in it for a mission. You know, you have a brand mission that will exist long after you're gone. You want to have a legacy, an impact. And those are the kinds of things that people are really connecting with, which is why, and you connect back with that. You know, it's a two-way street. Whereas on the other extreme, for the people who are in it for themselves, it's one way. They just accept all of the accolades and just walk off with it. Say, yeah, great. Dick suck tonight. Woo woo.
Have you ever found yourself, and like, it's always a red flag in my head that means like, oh, I need to like go talk to someone. Like, have you ever found yourself, or do you find yourself wishing that you didn't have that? Like, you know, anonymity, and again, like, we're not Bieber. It's like we're not running from LAX with like a new, like, I'm not wearing a Mr. Potato Head mask at the airport. Like, but at a certain point, I got into this because I love to train. It's my favorite thing in the world. And one thing that has pulled me away from my training consistently more than anything else is the fact that has turned into a business, right? To a certain degree. And like, the likelihood that the two places I get recognized is the airport and the gym, because it's just a pure numbers game. I spend most of my time in airports and gyms. So like, for me, when I get, my biggest source of frustration is having an inability to train the way I want to train the way I used to train.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, when I was living in the Forerunner, I was a monster. Show me. I could consistently total more money than I had in my bank account.
Yeah.
I could total 1,900 pounds, whatever the 800 and something, whatever kilos, and I would have to check the unit price of eggs. But, the veins in my legs were crazy.
That's the dream.
But yeah, you want to be squat Jesus in Venice like 40 years from now, but like, it still pulls at me a lot, and that's something where like, I know my values are off. I know I need to talk to someone when I'm like, I just want to train. I said that last week, and you're just like, okay, like, you loser, like, shut up. And like, he's someone I talk to a lot about it. Like, do you ever find yourself in that position where, like, you know, jacked Eugene just starts like, hi friend, like, for me again, knock knock, me, Jack Eugene here.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Yeah.
It
does, you know, especially like now I look at like what I know now compared to what I knew back in the jacked Eugene days.
Yeah.
Even like what I know now compared to what I knew a year ago, I'm like, man, if I had the same lifestyle setup that I had 7-8 years ago, and the same devotion towards training that I had all those time ago with the knowledge I have now, man, that would be a very different Eugene now. So it's very tempting. Yeah. So it's like, it's part of like wouldn't it be nice if I could do this? So there's always gonna be those kind of fantasies, you know? Wouldn't it be nice if I had a 10-inch dick? That'd be great too. Some things that's not gonna happen.
At a certain point, that's gotta be inconvenient. That's how I justify it to myself. Just who could manage this? So much upkeep. Just slog it over the shoulder.
Something about low blood pressure.
It's just a hassle at some point. But the way I keep that in check, because it does definitely come to mind, where I'm like, man, I know if I just gave myself 6 months or 12 months, I asked myself, I put myself in a couple of different scenarios. I say, well, will you really be satisfied by that? Will it really bring you happiness and joy? And what else will it take away from in terms of opportunity cost? If you devote your time to that, what does it mean you can't do? Right. Like, I've got the perfect setup. I've got my gym, got my app. I could stay at home and just train and just get jacked as fuck and just vlog that and have it on YouTube and make money through that. But I'm like, what does that then mean I can't do in terms of traveling, in terms of seeing other people? And I'm like, well, that's what I care about more. So that keeps me in check. But then also I say, okay, what would be the minimum that I would be able to accept for myself for training? Like, I know I could do this with training. What if I just did that? Would that keep me satisfied? Would that keep me happy? Would that keep me moving in the right direction? So I've got to find what that minimum is and say, okay, just do that. And that will just keep me going, keep me moving in the right direction. Mm-hmm. So just being clear on those thresholds of like, yeah, what am I losing out on by potentially pursuing this? And then if I wanted to pursue this, what would be the minimum amount that I could do to keep me happy?
Do you feel as if, like, because I struggle with this a lot, and we go through the same thing. Jordan's still competitive in Olympic weightlifting.
I don't know if I'd say that.
Is like, I struggle with, like, have I been the biggest and leanest I'll ever be in my life? Have I been the strongest I'll ever be? Like,
We've had that conversation
he did an eval on my knee yesterday, and we pretty much surmised that I don't have a left ACL anymore.
Who needs it?
Who needs it? Overrated, really. And it's like, so I mean, I have a myriad of injuries, but like, that's a lot to be like, I don't know what my best squat is, but it was like, I didn't think it was my best squat when I did it.
Right.
Which is like, now I'm like, I turned 32 in a few weeks, and it's like, I don't have an ACL, and like, I travel a lot, and I eat a lot of good food, but not good for me. I'm like, is this it? Like, is this, can I get back to, even if I had the, shut the world out for 12 months and just train, like, is it even there?
Right.
Like, because you can turn it on and off, and you've been to, like, Jack Eugene was so jacked. He was so unbelievably jacked. Do you feel as if, like, that, like, do you feel accomplished from what you've done that quells that a bit? And you can look at old pictures like, look, dude, it's already there. Right? Like,
yeah, well, in a sense, like, there's always like, I know I could be bigger. I know I could have filled that more. I know how I felt back then, looking in the mirror, wearing clothes. I'm like, man, I know I could have done more. I know I could still do more. And I didn't know back then when I stopped that would be the last time I competed, or that would be the biggest leanness I would be. That, similar to you, like, that can be the biggest, strongest leanness you're ever going to be for the rest of your life. But realizing now, yeah, probably will. That probably is the biggest that I've ever would have been in my life and ever will be for the rest of my life. And it's a kind of sobering thought. But when you focus just on that, of course, it's going to be very depressing. Like, I'm never going to be that big. I'm never going to get strong. I'm never going to have veins on my skull the way that I used to have. Man, I miss that. Like, it's kind of depressing. But then you also got to ask the question. There's two ways to look at that question. Like, yeah, you're never going to be that again. But right now, like 10 years time, what are you going to be because of that? Like, maybe you've reached your peak 10 years ago of your biggest, leanest, strongest. What peak are you going to reach 10 years from now because of that? Maybe you're going to be at your absolute, you're going to be smartest of this, or most knowledgeable on that, or have a better experience with travel, relationships, have a family. Who knows? Right. Those things are going to be a direct result of you not being for chasing that pipe dream, which I think a lot of people get stuck in with bodybuilding, powerlifting. They're just like, I'm going to be bigger, better than last time. And it's this dangerous pursuit after a while. I would imagine that you're someone who a lot of people reach out to for advice. Yeah, right? And I got no idea why. I think that's not healthy. Well, yeah, that's not a good idea.
I get posed the question a lot of, if you could go back and tell yourself 5 years ago something that you wish you knew, or that you knew now you wish you knew then. And like, oftentimes when you get asked questions, it's basically from someone else. It's someone 5 years junior to your experience or something like that. What advice do you find people are seeking most often, and why, when they come to you?
Yeah, so if it's not like the typical, hey, how do I grow my biceps? How do I scratch my back more comfortably again, like mobility shit like that. If it's actually like life questions, it'll be around business for one thing. Like, how do I grow my business? How do I grow my social media? All that kind of stuff. How do I do what you do? But a big thing is, like, what would be the advice you would give to your 20-year-old self to help you accomplish what you've accomplished? And they don't mean accomplishments as in just business or an app. They mean it, I know, as a whole life thing, because they can see just what I put on social media. I appear to be a bit more balanced and a bit more wholesome, especially if they've watched me for a long time. They've seen how I've just changed. So yeah, I get that. I understand that. And most of the time I'd tell them, they'll say, if I'd tell myself one thing back then or 10 years ago, it'd be just be prepared to have an exit strategy for anything you go into. Whether it's business, make sure you have an out planned for it. Make sure you have something, where, not because you want to shut down your business, but you know where it's going to go. Have a rough idea. Not like a full set business plan, but you want to have like an idea on, like, why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you doing what you're doing, and how are you going to pass this on? How are you going to be able to grow it more? Because an exit plan isn't just shutting things down. Exit plan is, how do you grow Prescript from you giving a course as a webinar? How do you grow it into a brand with 10 different people, with staff? How do you grow it to become more than a fitness thing, but a podcast? How do you grow this to become more of just a whole physical culture? A whole culture, not even physical culture, just culture in general. How do you grow that? That's an exit strategy from you starting out as Prescript, you guys just running seminars. Very, very different animal. And so I think the same thing applies in most of what we do, where people don't really think ahead like that. Not that you have to have a 10-year plan or a 5-year plan, but you want to have some kind of idea as to why you're doing what you're doing, and like what kind of impact you want to have, and how to get there. Maybe.
Have you found, as your thought process has evolved, when it comes to just like delivering a seminar, like a 2-day or 3-day event, that you've tried to impart some of that value through like subtext? Because like that's something that we struggle with, is like, right, some people have watched everything we've ever put out. Yeah. Right? And with you, that's a lot of shit. That is so many things of Eugene. Right? If you're a subscriber to the app, the YouTube channel, all the podcasts that you've like, that's a ton of stuff. Yeah. And we feel this like, I don't know anything else. Like I don't know what else we could do. Yeah. So it's like, well, they're in person. We could do like palpatory stuff. Like, hey, we're all cool. Like, this is what an impersonatus feels like. This is a subscap. Right? Don't poke your client in the armpit, but this is where it is.
The nipple region.
Yeah, the old, that's a big one. Yeah, don't do that.
Gooch. The old Gooch release.
The Taint one, I believe, is the Ed Cohen special. The Gooch release. That, God, don't come back on us. We have good lawyers, please. We do have good lawyers. But it's like, how much of that, I don't know, for a simpler term, like life advice, do you find yourself trying to weave into it? Because it's like, for us, it's almost cathartic in a way. Like, I think we ended the seminar last weekend, and the big takeaway sentiment was like, be cool. Yeah. Just be cool. Like, just, your client comes in, their backer, it's like, just be cool. Like, you're freaking out because you don't, be cool, like, just, and it's usually like, and lastly, the adductor magnus attaches 90% to the ischial tuberosity. Thank you for your time. And it's just like, dude, no one fucking cares, and it doesn't matter. Like, have you found yourself trying to like weave some of your earned wisdom into and impart on people, or like,
I'd say, like, now that you put it like that, I definitely do. And it's unintentional. Like, I didn't say this thing, I want to do more in that regards. But I feel like the more that I've taught over the years, the more that I've learned how to allow my personality to come through. Or I remember the first seminars I was teaching, I was like, man, people are paying a lot of money here. I got to blow them the fuck away. I got to have literature up here. I've got to break down research. I've got to show them the anatomy charts. I've got to show them this whatever scientific thing. I've got to have the lingo down pat as well. I've got to speak on that level or above that level. I've got to blow their fucking minds. And then now, the first thing I'll teach them, the first thing I'll say in a seminar is, you are going to forget 80% of this weekend. So if you put that, say 20 hours or whatever, what's that? That's 2 hours. You're gonna remember maybe like 2 hours worth of content. You're spending a whole weekend, and you're gonna get 2 hours. That's a pretty shit deal. That's a pretty shit return on investment. And chances are, if you don't review it at all, you're gonna forget 80% of that 20% within the next week. Yeah. So you're here for maybe 20 minutes. You're giving me 20 hours of your time for 20 minutes. What the fuck are you doing? You should leave right now. And then they leave, and it's a really shit weekend. But you saw you get the photo first. Right? Yeah. So you can post all the content, like, money's in the account. Yeah. No, but I told them, I say, look, this is realistic. Like, you're going to forget most of what you do. So what are we here for? Why are we really here? What are we going to get out of the weekend like this? We are using, like, you guys, you use training, you use all the stuff that we teach about here, industry stuff. We use this as a language, as a way to send a message. And the message isn't about learning about where the adductor attaches. I can't tell where the adductor attaches. I got to Google that shit. That's what I told them as well. I say, look, I forget most of what I teach you guys. I'm going to have to refer to my notes. I'm going to refer to the slides on the screen to say, oh yeah, that's exactly what I want to teach you guys and make sure I remember it. Because it's just like you go to a concert and the guitar player is playing a solo, they're speaking to you. They're using the guitar as a way to speak a certain language to you. We're using the training stuff, the anatomy stuff, the biomechanics stuff, the physiology stuff to speak a language that should be connecting them on a deeper level to help them make better life choices. And the life choice might be around, you know what, it's okay to be wrong a lot of the time. It's okay to own up and say, look, I made a mistake with this, or I was wrong about this technique. You know, I taught this machine lap pull down this way in the past. Here's where I went wrong. Here's why it could be a little bit better. But also, here's why this little bit better is probably not relevant for 90% of you. This whole optimal spiel. And teaching in that way, yes, they're going to learn about the different variations of a lap pull down. But more importantly, the message they're going to learn is be cool. You know, don't stress. Like there's many roads lead to Rome. There's many ways to contextualize this stuff. And if you forget all this stuff after, here are the base principles to anatomy or moment arms or whatever to help to put together this stuff again after the fact. So I tell them if there are like a couple of points you want to take from the seminars, these are the biomechanical principles that it's all built upon. Here's the lens to look at training through, I guess. But more importantly, here is the acceptance to the fact that you're always going to be learning stuff, you're always going to be forgetting stuff, and the most powerful thing for you is like these seminars, they're opportunities for you to have the seeds planted. And then it's up to you now to then interpret that however you want, to grow them however you want, to nurture them however you want, and then to go into do whatever you want with that. Because you have 30 people in a seminar, you're not going to create 30 mini Jordans. You're going to create 30 better versions of those people who are then going to create their own thing. And it's not up to you to say you have to learn where the adductor attaches. It's about, here is my skill set as a human of what I've learned through life, and here's how I can impart that upon you through the language of training.
Right.
Which we can all speak on.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that is trying to get them to impart that, because we're in a weird position, like we're removed and like at a meta level, right? Because like you'll have 30, again, like you said, not 30 little Eugenes, but 30 people who hopefully leave better. But we're in an industry where when those 30 people leave, they're gonna have hopefully 130, 140 training hours a month with maybe 30, 40 people if they have a digital presence. That could be that again, if not more. If they have a large platform, they could be writing exercise programming that reaches thousands of people. Like, have you ever thought on how many people do exercises because the way you think? Like, does that blow your fucking mind?
I haven't. That's kind of scary though.
Do the math though. Seriously, like the meta impact of being in our weird little position where we just like grab 30 people and we whisper in their ear for the weekend. And then I'm going to get a DM about that. There's weird people who like voice stuff on the internet. That's going to be a strange one. We put up, no, we're not going to talk about the foot back. We did a foot. We had our shoes off in one. I'm glad everyone has shoes on here. But it's like, because it's not, I mean, it is that bit of wisdom, but their job is to be the you in the room, right? Like you are you're the client, they're the coach, and they're looking to emulate whatever it is you impart on them, so that when they're in that dynamic with their client, they have the confidence, the sound bites, the anecdotes, the wisdom that you imparted on them. Right. And that is such a scary thing. Because like, dude, if you had a thing with sleeping with everyone's wife, it'd just be a cult, right? Like that would 100%. It would just be, Ganbaru would now be Om Shinrikyo, and there'd be a bunch of bombs on trains in Japan. Like that, it's crazy to think, like, go home, do the math on how many seminars you've done, how many people have been on your app, how many of those are coaches, and how many, like the average client roster of a coach, and think, oh my God, people did this exercise before this exercise, or change this, and like I would argue for you, it has to be in the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people have changed the way they've worked out because someone told them the telephone game, and we pull on that thread. We do like the Charlie Day board with all the little wire strings and all the pictures. The main guy at the top is Uncle Eugene. Does that not scare the shit out of you?
Yeah, for sure.
Did you not think about that before?
Not really.
All right. So when you're not sleeping tonight, call me, because I feel the same way all the time. Because like, I don't know. That's something that trips me up a lot, is what is the impact we're trying to have at the end user, right? Like, what is the actual scope of what we're capable of doing, right? Like, and I don't think we've reached it. Clearly haven't reached it as an industry, but like, if like for us, it's really shifted towards, we teach all these complex things. And then we go, guess what? If your client wants to do it this way, guess what you're going to do?
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're just going to do the thing that makes them happy. Like, we've really pivoted away from the optimal. Yeah. We haven't pivoted away to the optimal. We've pivoted towards the optimal, because the optimal is being happy. Like, and that's what we try and impart, because everyone comes like, oh my God, torque. I'm like, oh my God, you don't know their dog's name. Right? But yes, also torque, but like, that's the language that we need to speak. Like, it's like a YouTube video. It's the bait and switch. It's like, okay, you're going to come in and think you're going to learn this, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, but it's like, we need you to just be like human beings that interact and make people's lives better, whatever that looks like. And don't be like a shrink. You can do that with exercise. right? Like you
Yeah.
talked about Tool, or you talked about the guitar player communicating with
Yeah,
notes.
yeah.
Well, our language is reps
Yes.
and sets and tempo or rest periods or whatever, right? So it's like giving them giving them a thesaurus and be like, say what you mean, right? And mean what you say, and hopefully that message is being happy, because it's such a scary feeling to be like, to get tagged in a single leg RDL video in a country where you don't know the language. I'm like, I hope they're not talking shit in like Mandarin or something. I'm sorry if I put that bomb in your head, but I feel better now that I know that you're stressed about it.
Yeah, for sure. I will be. I'll be thinking. I'll be second guessing everything I say. Like, hang on, how is this going to get filtered down? The 7 degrees of separation. How's this going to be spun back around and destroyed, put back together, and then somehow tagged back to me? Is that a good thing? Is that something I want?
But I think you do it in a way where your values come through, and it's like, because people aren't just coming for the X's and O's.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know if it's we have to have a conscious effort with us, or it's something that we come across more. Like you learning that song on guitar was the single most enjoyable part of every part of my day for like 6 months at a time. And it's like, for me, it's for the longest time, it was he snatches and clean and jerks, I deadlift, and they show up and they're like, right, call your mom. And they're like, what? Like, call your mom. But deadlifting, no, call your mom. Like, I don't know. It's such a weird place to have an impact on people. And there's such like a responsibility to get the right messaging across.
For sure.
That it's like, oh no, people did their lateral raises outside the neutral scapular plane. It's like, yeah, but did he walk his dog this morning? Like, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, for sure.
That's where I struggle.
For sure. Well, I think, like what we're realizing now is that, yeah, most of the stuff that we teach doesn't actually matter as much as we thought it would years ago.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Like, sorry. Thanks. No
Yeah.
refunds.
Yeah. It's a full circle thing where, like, the ones who really obsess and care about it, they're the ones probably making the least progress.
Right.
And it's because they're hyper analytical on these kinds of things, and they focus on nuance and forget about the practicality and then the human being.
How do you
Yeah.
predict like the evolution? Because like once you arrive at that point, it is like you used the word sobering before, and I really like that. Like once you personally arrive at that point, you're like, oh no, it doesn't really matter for a lot of like the majority of people. Did that change your trajectory? Like, what is the trajectory now? Like, you're obviously back on the road.
Yeah.
Is that going to be something
Yeah.
you continue to do? I plan on getting into travel blogging.
Yeah. I don't see
Eugene
anything wrong
laughed
with
at the
that.
idea, and I was like,
I
oh,
don't
okay,
see-
never mind. Huh?
Yeah,
Just kidding.
I guess I'll stop travel blogging then. No, it definitely has changed a lot of the trajectory of what I teach. Even like just the last couple of workshops I did back home, I was stumped because I was reviewing my old notes, which is not that old. It's a couple of years old. Same relevant principles. I was like, you know what? I don't want to teach this anymore because it's overcomplicating something that I know doesn't matter as much anymore. I can remove so much of this stuff. And then I was like, oh shit, what's left? What's left? Do I really need to do a 2-day thing? Do I really even need to do a day thing? Does a lot of this stuff really warrant a full-blown seminar? Or are there better ways to present that, better ways to put that out there in the world? I'm still not too sure on that. So this next few workshops I do will be a good testing ground for it, for me to change up a lot of things, and just rework how I present this information and saying, is this the best way to communicate this message of the training stuff? Is this the best format, the best platform for it? Or is it now, are these workshops more so just becoming a novelty for people, which still has a purpose.
Absolutely.
The novelty thing is still a really, really big thing. But if it's going to be more of a novelty thing than a pure educational thing, what should be the main emphasis on, and what does that look like as an event?
Right.
You know, does that look like a full weekend? You wouldn't do a full weekend for novelty. You'll do a couple of hours. You do a gig as a novelty,
Right.
to give people the right amount of information in the right style. A full weekend looks very different. Maybe the full weekend should be more of an educational course, like your prescript course. Maybe it should be an ongoing mentorship-based thing. Who knows? To teach those people the nuance at that level. Because you still, I love talking at that level. I love talking about the optimal shit. I love saying, hey, here is why theoretically you shouldn't put your arm into the position for this fiber of the pec that everyone cares about for some reason. That's cool. For nerds, it's cool. Even though it's impractical for most people even most people listening to this who care about training, it's impractical for them. It's not realistic. So there's going to be a big change. I don't know what it looks like yet. And that's, in the middle of it right now. I'm not sure. I did know when I stopped traveling a couple of years ago because of, I just burned out more than actual COVID. I was like, I'm actually going to just stop traveling because it was just reaching a point where I was like, am I having the impact I want? And I wasn't sure if I was. And I was coming off, 9 months of traveling, thousands of coaches, having a positive impact. I was like, is that the impact I really want? Yes, it's cool for business. Yes, it's cool for growth and expansion, and they're having a positive impact. But is it really what I wanted to leave as a mark in the right way? I don't know. And that's where I actually wouldn't have come back on tour again if I wasn't pushed to come out here to Canada. I would have just been like, I'm happy at home. I feel like the past year or so, I've become very institutionalized, as they say in the Shawshank Redemption, where you sort of get used to being in that.
You're red.
Yeah,
you're a guy who can
exactly.
find
I was like, I'm happy here. So it was a big push to get me out, because it's very comfortable. But I think it's a good thing that I'm out, because it's going to help force me to start to rethink things that I'm doing and try to find something better.
I like that the process doesn't escape the core passion. Like, notice at no point it's like, I'm going to be teaching business online.
Yes, now it's how to grow
I'm
business.
actually, I'm big into Finex. I have the Bitcoin watch. I really took a dive on Luna. We're going to buy AMC later. Because there's just a weird, moving of the goalpost. And it's because that means everything you ever said was just gone, the win. So I like that you're just like, how can there's still so much to impart with the tools that we have. And I just think it's so rare, because most people feel they get this feeling of like, oh, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay. Dogecoin. You're like, what? No, dude, what happened to you, man? Everyone's wearing monochromatic clothing and those goddamn Balenciaga shoes, the fucking worst. But I like that you still have I don't even think it's an allegiance, or just the passion doesn't go away, because if it goes away, it's not a passion.
True. Yeah,
right? I wasn't passionate about guitar when I was 15. Right? I've been passionate about my entire life. I still play, not like you're really, really good. But it's not like, I was really passionate about skateboarding one summer. It's like, no, you did it and you gave up, and you don't give up on things you're passionate about. So I think that, again, I think people who are in a position to create a meta impact have to have a more meta thought process. And I know Meta's been ruined because Zuckerberg called Facebook Meta, but the idea that there's levels to it, and there's things that you can teach, but there's things that people understand and they learn between the lines. And I think even you just describing that is oh, okay, that's such a it's such a hallmark of people worth listening to, I think. So thanks for talking.
Hey, pleasure to be here,
dude. They're always someone, it's funny, someone not knowing that we were going to be together, it was so serendipitous, put up a post of me and you in your gym.
Yes, yeah.
And it was titled "The Collaboration You Didn't Know You Needed."
Yeah.
And it was me and Uncle Eugene.
Yeah.
And I was way too fat for that shirt. Oh my God. That Ganbaru, I was like, what kind of Australian large is there? I don't know what it was. But
are you still dieting now? I did see recently you've been doing the
dieting?
karting. You've been doing the
I'm just
conditioning
trying to
stuff.
see my 35th birthday.
All right. Yeah.
The traveling has been a lot.
Yeah.
It's been a lot. It's been a lot because I don't know, I just try and celebrate a lot now, because I'm so stoked that we're here and we can do
Every
this.
day's a celebration.
But seriously, but it's I had 2 desserts last night. An ass, hand
That's
to God.
less than normal.
That's a fact. I usually just do the magic hand wave. But no, I don't know, it's just it's tough. With my partner right now, it's fitness, and not that fitness is on the back burner, but it's just I'm okay with not being the biggest, strongest. When I have that thought, I'm like, oh, she's home. Okay. Hi. And she's just, we have a little cat, and it's just okay, I missed a workout today, whatever. So.
Well, that's fitness as well. Fitness isn't lifting heavy weights or performing well an endurance athlete or whatever, or looking a certain way. Fitness is encompassing it into your life.
Yeah. That's the happiness thing is, and that's why I think I preach it so much, because by far, we had an interesting year last year with the business side, but I would say this is the happiest I've ever been. And I think you'd probably agree with me on that. So that's, the message I sense is just hey, this has really helped me. And so the health thing is whatever because when I'm doing cardio, it's because the wife is right next to me doing cardio, and I don't get to spend a lot of time with her. So
Yeah.
if she's like, "Hey, we're gonna go do that," okay. Like I did one of those breakout room things.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Where you
yeah.
pay someone
Yeah,
to,
yeah,
and I
the
talk about it
escape
now. I'm
rooms.
like, what
Yeah,
the?
yeah.
And it's just like she wanted to do it, so it wasn't even. Okay, yeah, great. I'll be happy if you like that. Great.
It's like a new Mellow Jordan. Do you appreciate this newfound
my
Jordan?
love this guy.
He's known me for a
There's so
decade.
much less rage voicemails.
So what I used to do.
He used to send me a text message. He'd be like, "I'm gonna call you right now. Please don't pick up." And then like 18 or so minutes later, I'd get a notification that I had a voicemail. And there'd just be this 15-minute rant
Runs out of tape.
of everything Jordan hated about
Yeah.
that day.
It was a lot. He's seen me through a lot.
You're in a good place.
I've been
And I
a
appreciate
much
that.
better. Yes, I'm sure your phone bill appreciates it too.
Yeah.
I would literally just get like voicemail full. And sometimes you would just leave it there, like so he wouldn't clear it, so I couldn't call and leave it.
I didn't know that
on the
was possible to fill out a voicemail. That's
You
impressive.
haven't harbored the kind of rage that I've harbored.
Yeah, wow. So now is it like I'm gonna leave you a voicemail? It's like I saw a cute dog today. My
More or
cat
less.
is so cute.
Yeah. He sends me pictures of Bo. I'll FaceTime, or like we're usually on calls and my like cat climbs on my head or something like that. Yeah, it's more tame.
Good.
Yeah.
Those are good.
Do you think that's gonna? It's interesting because it's a whole different edge. Do you think that's? I believe it's gonna be a very positive thing. Can you see that becoming a negative thing?
Training keeps me grounded because there's still. I think we all have things that we don't and maybe shouldn't share with other people,
Right.
like thoughts.
Yeah.
Like, and they're transient, and that's what the gym is for.
Mm-hmm.
Like, whoa, where does that? That's got to go somewhere. That can't come out in the grocery store. Like, so no, I think there's always going to be an edge. Like, I'm competitive by nature. We wouldn't be doing the stuff we're doing. We wouldn't have done the stuff we've done if there wasn't like a reason to keep pushing forward. Like, there's a understanding now that never be fully satisfied.
Yeah.
Right. That's an understanding, which I think is great. I think once you get used to that, you don't feel like you're clawing, you're almost there. You're just like, oh, I'm wherever I am. That's great. And like, that's comforting in a way, but like, I know it won't ever go. Like, I'm not gonna take a bunch of DMT and tell people to like sing Kumbaya on a field and start painting my face. And like, when people do mushrooms, do they give them the long beaded necklace with the
starter pack?
Yeah, it is just, and it's like, no, like I definitely have like, there's an edge there, a competitive nature. Like you said, like, you just want to get better, and it might not be 1% every day, but like strike when the iron's hot. And you know, I'm not gonna like let a cat and, you know, not being in a stressful situation every day just be like, like inoculate my drive or passion for what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I can definitely see where there could be a concern there, like for some people. But for me, it's like we have some clarity of what we want to do, and it's going to take a certain level of veracity to get it done. And
For sure.
you know, I can pet my cat, and then I can, you know, we can go out to dinner, and then if I need to, I'll stay up till 5 a.m. I'll wake up at 3 a.m. Like, I'll be willing to do things that other people won't be willing to do across the board. That's the way it's been since I was a kid. That's the way it'll always be. Some of the things I'm willing to do now that I wasn't willing to do is sleep more than 4 hours, is go out to dinner, is to do, and because I know the big picture, right? I know that every time I seem to go out to dinner, I get this idea in the back of my head that turns out to be really good. So it's like, I can sit there, and I think you learn to let your grip loose a little bit. And I think that's something that if I need to squeeze tight, I can, but I know the value of being a little bit softer in the hands so things don't slip through your fingers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it took a while.
I like it.
Took a while. A couple anxiety attacks, and
Yeah.
you know, but we made it.
do it.
We're here. And again, you're a big part of that. You've seen a little bit of the rage.
For sure.
Uncle Eugene talked me back off of a few but it's still advice that I repeat to myself when I run into those situations. It's like, you know, like, what do you want out of the situation, right? Like, what is the end goal? Like, put your ego aside. How do you want? What is the best possible outcome of this for you? And then how do you get it?
Yeah.
And like, that's a wisdom that I don't think a lot of people have. And also coming from a place that, you know, if some, again, one of these douchebag shaman starter pack people tells me, I'm like, all right, man, go smoke another one.
Yeah.
But when you say it, it's like, oh, that comes from a place of understanding. I've been there. I've trained. I've been Jack Eugene. I've been angry. I've been a little bit lost. I'm now here. And that's someone worth listening to. So again, thanks for talking.
I'm glad to hear it.
I appreciate you coming out, man. It means a lot. I know traveling is difficult. I know, the trials and tribulations of going before like a seminar in a few days.
Sure.
So taking the time to come out means a lot. Hopefully it means a lot to everyone who listened, man. I really appreciate you coming out.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.